Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show, Red Pill Edition. My name is Leon Jones. And in this segment, what I'm going to do is piggyback off of a video I did last week. Now, if you are familiar with my content, I do red pill content, I do political content, and my favorite content is psychological content. Now, when we deal with psychology, we're dealing with human behavior. Now, here in the manosphere, there are a lot of subjects that take place. Now, most people who aren't familiar with the manosphere, you would think everybody is talking about women. Well, in the manosphere, particularly in the Black sector, we talk about men and women. Now, where I have my connection with men and women is the mind. I talk about the behavior because a lot of actions are committed through behavior. And when it comes to psychology, there are different types of dysfunctional behaviors. Again, last week I talked about something that was sexual deviance. That is known as paraphilia. Now, when it comes to paraphilia, there are different types of sexual deviancies that go with that, like transvestism, frauderism, voyeurism. Now, something else that goes right along with paraphilia, it's an addiction called partialphilia. And the topic I'm going to talk about today is going to be partialphilia. Now, the difference between paraphilia and partialphilia is when you deal with paraphilia, you deal with the types of sexual deviant behaviors. Again, I just named a few. If you missed, go back, review this content again. Now, when we deal with partialism, we're basically dealing with an obsession. Now, some of these obsessions are weird, some of them aren't. And when it comes to the human body, particularly when we deal with sexual stimulation, there are areas of the body that turn us on. And I know a big area is the hair, the smell of the hair, the touch of the hair. Also be the feel of the breasts, the feel of the bust. Some like feet. But regardless, when it comes to partialism, you're basically dealing with an obsession to an area of the body. Now, let me share my screen and get more in depth. Now, again, what I'm going to talk about in this video is similar to paraphilia. So the topic that I'm going to basically name this video is what is partialism? Is it healthy? Again, the topic of this video is what is partialism? Is it healthy? And in this video, I'm going to break it down to is it healthy? How does it work? Partialism or fetish, the types, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a summary. And then after this, I'm just going to get into other videos on how you manage different types of partialism. It's very important because, you know, a number of individuals really don't know what stimulates them. Many individuals don't understand what partialism is. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. I gave you my definition of partialism. So I'm going to give you the Healthline definition of partialism. It's basically a sexual interest with a focus on a specific part of the body. Now, this can be any part of the body, such as, I've already told you, hair, breast, or buttocks. Now, the most common form of partialism is atypical, in which a person becomes sexually aroused by feet. Again, partialism is classified as a type of paraphilia or paraphilic disorder. Now, paraphilia involves sexual arousal to objects, situations, or targets that are considered atypical or not of the norm. Again, I told you about voyeurism, transvestism, and frauderism. Now, partialism being considered a paraphilia is somewhat controversial and a much debated topic amongst health professionals. And when it comes to paraphilia, one must understand that many types of paraphilia are not considered socially acceptable or are illegal, such as pedophilia, necrophilia. However, partialism is a type of paraphilia that is more of an interest or sexual preference than a paraphilic disorder, and usually acceptable between two consenting adults. Now, something else that comes into the mix that most of us don't mention, what about pheromones, the scent of a body? Because, again, as a man, when a woman washes her hair, she will use the shampoos, the conditioners, the moisturizers, and sometimes the scent from those shampoos and conditioners and moisturizers will come from the hair, and it can be very arousing. Now, the question is, when it comes to partialism, is it healthy? Now, I'm just going to say this. When it comes to partialism, basically, it's only considered unhealthy if it causes you or another person to distress or harm. Now, as long as it's not impairing your functioning at home, work, or other areas in your life or harming others, such as children or non-consenting adults, it's not considered unhealthy. Now, let me repeat that again, because there are a number of people who are going to think that partialism is unhealthy. It can be unhealthy. And it's only considered unhealthy if it causes you or another person distress or harm. Again, as long as it's not impairing your functioning at home, work, or other areas in your life, or you're harming others, such as children or non-consenting adults, it is not considered unhealthy. However, now, when we break it down, though, there is a difference, because we're going to be flip-flopping back into paraphilia again, because there's paraphilia and a paraphilic disorder. Now, the difference between paraphilia and a paraphilic disorder is now more clearly defined in the most recent edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, known as DSM-5. Now, if you don't know what the DSM-5 is, well, I'm going to tell you right now. The DSM-5 is the fifth edition of the DSM, and it's basically a handbook that is used by healthcare professionals in the United States and most of the world as the authoritative guide to the diagnosis of mental disorders. It's like the laws in the Black's Dictionary. If you have a Black's Dictionary of laws, that is the Bible. Heck, the blueprint is the Bible. Most of us use the King James Version. Now, the new definition clearly states that the difference between paraphilia as a sexual interest or preference, such as partialism, and a paraphilic disorder that stems from the behavior. Now, according to the criteria in the DSM-5, paraphilia is not considered a disorder unless it causes you to feel distress about your sexual interest, a sexual desire or behavior that involves the distress, injury, or death of another person, a desire for sexual behaviors involving someone who is unwilling or unable to give legal consent. Now, when it comes to partialism, how does it work? Well, when it comes to researchers, they're not exactly sure how partialism works and what causes a person to become excited by a single part of another person's body. However, there are many theories. Now, some experts believe that the patterns of erotic arousal associated with paraphilia are developed before puberty. And one theory is that it results from the anxiety or early emotional trauma that interferes with what is considered normal psychosexual development. Another theory is that early exposure to the highly charged sexual experiences conditions a person to believe that a non-sexual body part or object is sexually exciting, or we can say sexually stimulating or even arousing. Now, some believe that culture may have something to do with partialism because research shows that culture plays an important role in preferences for certain body parts or shapes. While other experts have pointed out that it is difficult, if not impossible, to determine what a person is really only attracted to a body part or if it is part of their attraction to one of the physical characteristics of a partner. Now, again, when you deal with any type of disorder, particularly sexual deviancy, you have to make a comparison. Now, again, I just told you in the beginning that partialism is not considered a disorder unless it causes harm or distress. But now you're going to have to make a comparison, and I'm going to do that between a fetish. So the comparison that you're going to see is partialism versus a fetish. And the reason why I want to break it down that way, it's because some might be asking, is partialism a fetish? Is a fetish paraphilia? Now, one thing I can tell you is both of these are a subset of paraphilia. Again, partialism and fetishism are both subtopics of paraphilia. So they are both paraphilia. So you can get a paraphilic disorder if you're doing harm with partialism and fetishism. Now, the question as to whether partialism is a fetish has been hotly debated for years. Now, the fetishism disorder is included in the DSM-5 chapter on paraphilic disorders. Neither is considered a disorder, again, unless it causes distress or harm, not just to someone else, but to you. Now, the only difference between partialism and fetishism is the focus of a person's interest. Because when you deal with partialism, it's a sexual arousal involving attraction to a specific part of the body, such as the breast or hands. Whereas a fetish is a sexual arousal through a non living object, such as shoes or underwear. Now, when we get down to partialism, there are types that you need to understand because partialism, again, can involve any part of the person's body. Now, let me just say this before I go on, because there is an exclusion when it comes to partialism. Partialism can involve any part of the person's body except for the genital area. And the most common types of partialism include paraphilia. Well, anything that deals with paraphilia, you're dealing with feet. Then there are hands. There's also something called trichophilia. That's dealing with the hair. Then you have oculophilia. That's the eyes. Then you have pygophilia. That's the buttocks. Then there's mesophilia, the breast. Then you have alvenophilia. That's the navel, which is your stomach, that little button in your stomach. Then you have alvenophilia. Now, alvenophilia is your stomach. Then, of course, you have the ears, then the neck. Then you have masculophilia or masculinia. Masculinia is the armpit, just like alveolignia is the stomach. Now, alvenophilia is the navel. Let me get the correction. And sometimes here when we do videos, we mispronounce a word, so we go back and pronounce it right to make sure that everything is clear. And that's just what I did. Now, again, when we have our takeaways from paraphilia, as we're doing partialism this week, and again, I just want to review that partialism is a subset of paraphilia. So tonight I'm doing partialism. Now, what we can take away from partialism is that it may not be considered the social norm. And this is going to be repeated over and over again. Because it's not considered a social norm, however, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone and it is enjoyed by two consenting adults, it's not considered unhealthy. Now, if you're concerned about your sexual preference or feel that its negativity is impacting any aspect of your life or someone else's life, then you need to go speak to a doctor. Why? Because they can refer you to a mental health professional with experience in paraphilic disorders. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. before I really get into everything. So I gave you basically the overview of partialism. But when it comes to trichophilia, which is basically partialism, or I'm going to say a hair fetish. Again, trichophilia, also known as a hair fetish, is when someone feels sexually aroused by hair or attracted to human hair. Now, this could be any type of human hair, such as chest hair, armpit hair, or even pubic hair. However, the most common focus for this attraction seems to be human head hair, because trichophilia can present as a long or short hair fetish, hair pull fetish, or haircut fetish, amongst others. Now, a sexual preference involving hair is not uncommon. It's perfectly fine as long as you're not hurting other people. Now, while the actual percentage of people who have trichophilia is unknown, it is a fetish that both men and women can develop. Now, here I can go over how it can show up, the ways people experience this type of fetish, and how to live with it. And that's going to be based on the specifics, because trichophilia or trichophilia is a type of paraphilia, according to the board certified psychiatrist, Dr. Margaret Seed. A paraphilia is an erotic focus on anything other than the genitalia of a consenting adult human partner. Now, paraphilia or fetishes is actually more common than you think. According to a 2016 study, nearly half of the 1,040 participants expressed interest in at least one paraphilic category. Now, trichophilia can manifest in a variety of ways, and here's how. Well, an individual with trichophilia would derive sexual pleasure from viewing, touching, and in rare cases, eating hair, says Dr. C. Now, most individuals with trichophilia or trichophilia report being drawn to hair since childhood and being drawn to shampoo commercials, which basically feature hair prominently. Now, they are usually attracted to a specific type of hair. For example, trichophilia triggers can include hair that is long and straight, hair that is curly, hair of a particular color, hair styled in a particular manner, such as in rollers, manipulating hair in a certain way during sex acts, such as pulling. Now, she also points out that for some people, just hair being touched or touching hair can bring a person to orgasm. Now, Dr. Gail Saltz, Associate Professor of Psychiatry in the New York Presbyterian Hospital, Will Cornell Medical College, says a hair fetish can involve any type of color, texture, or aspect of hair. It can also involve any form of interaction with hair, such as looking, touching, or grooming. Now, how does it make you feel? Now, the symptoms of trichophilia or how it makes you feel depend on the type of hair and situations that cause arousal. Now, this can be different for each person, but in general, having a hair fetish really just means that you get erotic pleasure from the object. In this case, I'm just talking about human hair. Now, this could mean you could get pleasure from getting a haircut, or you experience an erotic sensation while watching a shampoo commercial, regardless of your preference. If you find hair erotic, Salt says it's generally not a problem. It's just one of many things humans enjoy as part of their sexual life. Now, that said, she points out that if hair needs to be the number one source of erotic stimulation in order to achieve sexual gratification, then the fetish has turned into something more serious. Now, again, fetish or disorder, you be the judge. If Trichophilia goes beyond a normal sexual preference and causes distress to yourself or others. A doctor may diagnose you with a paraphilic disorder. Now, again, according to the most recent edition of the DSM 5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, people with a paraphilic disorder will feel personal distress about their interest, not merely distress resulting from society's disapproval or having a sexual desire or behavior that involves another person's psychological distress, injury, or death, or desire for sexual behaviors involving unwilling persons or persons unable to give legal consent. Now, Side says trichophilia is considered a disorder when it brings dysfunction to daily life or causes distress to the individual. Now, in psychiatry, this is called ego dystonic, which means that it's no longer in alignment with this person's belief system or in accordance with what they want for themselves, she explains. An example, says Side, what if a person began to act on urges to touch hair of a non-consenting person? This act basically, it drives a person, could drive a person wild, or it's going to make someone feel uneasy. Because if somebody comes up and starts rubbing your butt and you don't know them, or your breast, you're going to feel very, some are going to feel scared. Some are going to want to get up and cause some violence, depending on what gender you are. Now, again, I am not making any type of reference between homosexual and heterosexual. But again, when it comes to trichophilia, the drives to act on a fetish can be quite strong and unfortunately at times can override a person's better judgment. Now, as a result, it can also bring considerable shame and anguish to the person, and they can feel tormented or even disgusted by their thoughts. Now, when trichophilia starts to interfere with daily obligations, it's an indication that, of course, it becomes a disorder. Now, again, I've given you information from this article, and there's going to be a lot of repetition. And I like the repetition because it starts to pinpoint what's important when it comes to these disorders. Because a lot of us out here have sex, and sometimes it gets very freaky, but we don't know the harm that it can cause somebody, or you don't know the harm it could cause yourself. Now, again, for this example, someone with this type of paraphilic disorder may start showing up late for work because they spend an excessive amount of time on fetish websites. Now, at that point, it's crossed over into being a pathological condition that is basically disrupted to the life and leading to untoward consequences. Now, again, going through all that information, when it comes to any behavior or any disorder, you may not get rid of it. You could slow it down. But even if you slow it down, and let me go back to something. I'm not going to say you can't get rid of it. You can manage it properly once you understand the consequences, once you understand the definitions, the symptoms. Because when you manage trichophilia, what happens, once you understand the definition and you start to see the real world when it comes to trichophilia, it changes from a fetish to a disorder. There are things you can do to reduce the urges and better manage the condition. Since there is no cure for trichophilia, Dr. Side says treatment will focus on the management of the condition. Now, that being said, she points out that treatment is only recommended if the tradition is leading to a disruption in your life or you feel tormented by the urges. Now, if you're acting on such desires with the confines of a consensual, or let's say consensual relationship with other adults, or an adult who's not bothered by these drives, intervention isn't indicated. However, if the trichophilia is causing problems or you have a diagnosis of the disorder, there are a few options. Just like alcohol, you want to get rid of the urges. So self-help groups. And I always believe in self-help groups because of the people in the self-help groups, there's going to be some similarity to the addiction. Because just like substance abuse, fetishes can be addictions. But again, when you deal with self-help groups, because of its similarity to addiction, resisting the urge to act on impulses, paraphilia can be addressed within self-help groups based on a 12-step model. Then you have medications, because certain medications can be used to dampen the libido. These include medroxyprogesterone acetate, or Depo-Provera, and selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Those are known as SSRIs. Now, just so you understand, the bottom line, trichophilia is a sexual fetish involving human hair. As long as no one gets hurt physically or emotionally, and it's practiced between two consenting adults, experts say it can be an enjoyable part of your sexual life. If this fetish is interfering with your daily activities or relationships or causing harm to someone else, well, this is again when you need to consider seeing a mental health professional, because they have the tools to diagnose and treat trichophilia. Now, again, very important that you understand the difference between partialism and a fetish. Now, from my humble opinion, I always believe that when you are engaging in sexual activity with your partner, and here's what people really don't talk about. I mean, I know men and women, they can become aroused by one another. But there is going to be something that's going to take it in a pleasurable direction if you don't let anything get out of hand. Now, again, when it comes to guys, number of guys like long hair. Why? Because you can run your fingers through it. You can smell it. You can pull it. Guys like big butts. You can rub those. You can touch them. Guys like big breasts. Now, not all guys like big breasts, but a number of us do. But again, even women, some women like chest hair. Some women like the navel, the stomach. I'm just throwing examples out there. However, when you allow these obsessions to body parts to do harm, that's where the problem comes to be. Now, again, people who are consenting adults, it's okay to share different things, different ideas. However, don't let it go too far. Now, something else that's actually promoting all this trichophilia, frauderism is the porn industry. So in the old days of porn, you used to see maybe some doggy style and some missionary. Now, in the last 20 years, you've seen a heck of a lot of fetishes because there are a heck of a lot more fetishes than what I just mentioned. And in the porn industry, there's amputees, there's midgets, there's grannies, she-males, large women, short women, midget men, men hung like a horse, men that are small. But all these have a presence in partialism because there is something in that person's head when they made the porn to create it. Because you don't think some of these individuals who make porn don't get aroused? They're human as well. If they didn't get aroused, they wouldn't have the thought to create these films. Now, again, you must understand that you can't let anything get out of hand because too much of anything is not good for you. And what I'm going to tell you is when you are dealing with sex, because let's just be honest, everything that I've mentioned in the last couple of videos really revolves around sex. And if you put it all together, some of these sexual addictions can cross over to other areas like pedophilia. That's where the danger can start to lurk. Some of these individuals who have dreams of being RAPED, that's not good either, because it could actually lead into you being RAPED. You have other fetishes like BDSM, some like pain. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is partialism is basically part of paraphilia. All partialism is, as it states, you're just obsessed to a part, and a part is the body. But in the long run, it's still part of sex. Now, there are a number of individuals out here who don't know what they're doing, or if they know what they're doing, they are in the moment thinking that they're getting pleasure or giving pleasure. Perhaps they are, perhaps they aren't. But in the long run, when it comes to any type of paraphilia, you have to look at partialism. Now, let's be honest. When it comes to African American men, okay, a number of us, and this is just absolutely true. We talk about that big ass. Number of African Americans, for the most part, have pygophilia. Pygophilia is you're attracted to the butt. Number of us are individuals with masophilia. We're attracted to the breast. And regardless of what race you're in, and I'm talking about men right now, men are attracted to hair, particularly if it's long. They got trichophilia. Now, having the urge is one thing, but carrying it out to where it's going to be harmful to somebody, that's what you have to watch out for. So what I'm doing in this video is I'm just giving you a breakdown on what a fetish is and what partialism is. But if you look at a fetish and if you look at partialism, that partialism, you could say, is a fetish, but you have a fetish with a body part. But in the long run, what I'm giving you also is what these terms really are from a psychological standpoint. Because many of us are out here doing freaky stuff. It could be pleasurable, it could be unpleasurable. But in the long run, something else could be involved with this freaky stuff, adding a substance to it. It's also dangerous. Again, one thing about psychological disorders is I could be talking about one disorder and something else ties right into it. Alcohol is big when it comes to having sex. There's a porn addiction. So porn contributes to some of these partialisms and paraphilia. But now I can't blame it all on the porn. I have to blame it on the person, because you have a number of individuals who are watching porn and they want to act out what they see on porn in the real world. And again, you have a number of people who are sick out here. A number of individuals who have urges out here. Now, again, when it comes to fetishes, partialism, there's a lot of that going on out there. I'm just making you aware. And if you watch this video, I'm just giving you an overview. And when it comes to the information, I get it all from parts of the DSM-5. The DSM-5 is a diagnostical, or I call it the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. And at the end of the day, partialism is not harmful as long as it's with a consenting adult. But if you're doing harm to a non-consenting adult, to a child, or yourself, seek help. Sex is pleasurable and it's arousing until the fetishes go into the wrong direction to where somebody is harmed or killed. So in the end, understand what you are doing when it comes to sexual urges. Understand partialism. Understand paraphilia. Because in the end, some of these acts are legal and some of the acts are illegal. At the end of the day, you are accountable for what you do. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you are looking for some educational content, I like to do STEM content. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And get on over my second channel, called The Mind of STEM. And on that channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And some of the subjects that I talk about on that channel are chemical engineering, entomology, landscape architecture, and industrial technology. And again, I'm working on bringing back my blog talk radio show, and I'm going to try to do panels as well. But I like doing everything in content form, but the panels are coming. Just give me time. Now, for my blog talk radio show, guest calling number is 215-383-5785. Now, if you cannot find me on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, you can check me out on the 401 Talk Zone radio show. That goes on my Twitter account, and that's also on MeWe and Parler. And when it comes to the Mind of STEM, I just put that on Twitter. And the reason why my Mind of STEM doesn't go on MeWe and Parler, because MeWe and Parler, they're basically, I call them offbeat conservative content, because you can't put everything on Facebook. And a lot of what I see on those platforms is political. So something else I want you all to do. I'm not one that's going to be a pastor. It's going to ask for a lot of money. But I do pretty good content here. If you can hit the Cash App. That's $LEJ01021965. The link to my Cash App is going to be at the bottom of my videos. And also, when I do content here on YouTube, the link to where I got the information from is also going to be at the bottom of my YouTube video. So at the end of the day, I'm going to leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And for you individuals like to come down, thumb the video down, I'm going to tell you this. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. And if you don't like the information that I'm providing, don't watch it. Because in the long run, this is educational content for people who want to make their lives better, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And once again, thank you for viewing this video on the 401 Talk Zone radio show. And once again, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious night. God bless you. I'm out.